Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Russia is going down in the most ironic way possible. Country that became synonymous with oil, gas, petroleum, diesel, and export of said products, its economy now is completely being smothered and is going down because of the lack of the said products. Additionally, Russia is trying to pose and be aggressive towards the European states. The latest country to be struck, Denmark. The drones have been flying here all night. And this hit really close to my home, almost literally. Let's talk about this and other news in today's Daily News Update. Today, the whole country of Denmark and Danish police specifically were on the uproar, as during the nights, drones were spotted over the airports, near the military objects, all across the country. Aalborg, Billund airports had to be closed, while drones were spotted also in Esbjerg, Sonneborg, and Skrydstrup. Aalborg also serves as a military base, and Skrydstrup is home to some of the Air Force of F-35s and F-16s warplanes. Drones were seen over the Jutland Dragoon Regiment at Holstebro. Denmark's oil and gas platforms in the North Sea and near the central port of Korsør. None of the drones have been shut down in Denmark. And here you can see the map. Every place you see on that map, drones were spotted in Denmark. So it was happening all across the whole country. So when I said last time, when there was one drone spotting around Copenhagen, and so people tried to downplay it, where's your downplaying now? It's very clear it is Russia. Well, unless you believe what Russia is saying, it was Ukrainians or just random drones diving from the sea, you know, the wild ones that are just naturally migrating to the south, warmer countries because winter is approaching, then you're probably the most naive person ever. But for everyone else here, this is pretty obvious who is it doing and why it is being done. This is the direct challenge. And as we can see, people are recognizing this. This is a serious moment for Denmark and its top brass. Government defense and police quickly called a press conference where Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen said it looked systematic because the number of locations targeted. And the most damning, not just because that it was not shut down, is because that it was acknowledged that Denmark and many of its neighbors lack the kind of tools they need to bring down the drones. This is absolutely critical. And this is what we have been talking about on this channel for so long. And my hopes are that all of the people that I know talked about the threats of drones and threats coming from Russia and threats also for Denmark, and that said to us that we don't see threats right now. Well, now we had a whole night where a lot of people saw that threat. Thankfully, in Europe, we have a bit of a saving grace represented by Ukraine, because Ukrainian campaign is bringing Russia back to the Stone Age. As of September 24th, all grades of petrol, including the premium A400, have completely disappeared from filling stations in Russian-occupied Crimea. Crimea does not have gasoline, period. It just is not existing there. Quote, there are fewer cars on the roads. The fixed route minibuses are packed. Many people are openly voicing their anger, blaming the incompetence of the Kremlin leadership, the activists said. It is now becoming absolutely obvious that Ukrainian campaign that has been going on for just a couple of months, to be honest, I'm not even sure if it's been more than a month, maybe just a little bit more, but in any case, the results are staggering. And this is going to be more and more problematic for Russia, because what started first the month, or at least a month before, was that there was just some far outskirts regions of Russia that reported some problems with gasoline. There was prices rising, that there was some shortages. Well, now things are getting really bad. Gas stations across Russia have started rationing fuel sales as drone strikes on oil refineries by Ukraine deepen the supply crisis. Fuel retailers in importantly, Moscow, Leningrad, which is the region where St. Petersburg is, Ryazan, and Nizhny Novgorod, European regions of Russia, close to Europe, have confirmed that there have been limits imposed. Lukoil has banned canister sales at some Moscow stations and stopped accepting fuel cards at several stations in Nizhny Novgorod. By mid-September, shortages has been reported in 21 regions, ranging from Chukotka and Sakhalin in the Far East to Ryazan in Samara in central Russia. And prices since the start of the year for fuel products have risen to 40 to 50%. 40 to 50% increase in gasoline price. This is absolutely fantastic result. I don't know how to express just how stupendously successful this campaign is. And this is important for a variety of reasons. There is a first reason, obviously, is that Russia is going to be smothered. Obviously, the business, the economy, this is coming for sure. But also the military. Because while there was an assumption that while there will be problems with the Russian economy, everyone was assuming that it's not going to hit the Russian military because majority of military vehicles are running diesel fuel, right? Well, problem is that Russia changed their tactics. If you don't remember, Russia changed tactics to use light vehicles that mass-produced gas, these loaves that Russians are using, as well as motorcycles. And surprise, surprise, those are running on the gasoline. They are not running diesel engines. More importantly, diesel is not safe either, because everyone was expecting, saying there's like, well, you know, there's a lot of these refining stations in Russia, but they have these refining columns. And these refining columns, they are nice because they've been built by the European money, so and American money. So they have expensive components that Russia just cannot replace. But Russia has a lot of diesel production that they were doing in the Soviet Union, so they have a lot of their own technology for diesel production. Well, the problem that we find out is that no, that's not the case. There has now been reports on diesel prices increase and also some shortages in some regions. And diesel is a major part of the Russian economy because it's also being used for export. More than that, diesel is produced at the same distillation columns. And while there are distillation columns that are old Soviets, it doesn't help if Ukraine just systematically takes out every column anyway. So now Russia is just completely and utterly fucked. And there is another layer to this. And this layer, and people that don't like Donald Trump, you can close your ears right now. But Ukrainians have seen a bit of resurgence of morale. Trump's comments that Ukraine can return their territory were surprisingly effective in the Ukrainian society. It's like it was a boost of morale there because someone actually believed in them. Right? It doesn't matter if it's true or not, and like I'm pretty sure you will write everything that you think in the comment section. But the result was there. That Ukrainians saw the potential path how they can win again. It was always there, but you know it's been a long war, and like a lot of people have really started questioning whether or not they can win. Now, obviously, Trump is a president of the United States and he says a lot of various things, but it has been a morale boost. And more importantly, why it's also a morale boost is because of the strikes against the oil refineries. And it's a bit of a complex topic, and I'm still going to take my time to explain because I think it is relevant. In Ukraine, there was a lot of negativity around Syrskyi and his persona, what he does as a commander, and that he is not the best commander-in-chief. And one of those things were that there is this guy named Madyar that got a lot of publicity, and he's just a poser that just gets a lot of exposure because of his videos, and he's like a big supporter of Syrskyi. And Madyar, when he became the chief of the unmanned systems in Ukraine, has started bringing a lot of results. And seeing these Russian oil facilities being struck, seeing the effectiveness of Madyar, that he is literally bringing Russia, the whole Russia, to its knees with his approach to the strikes against Russia, is now also reflecting on Syrskyi positively, which is absolutely insane. So surprisingly, now kind of like we had sort of an amalgamation where I saw from some of the channels that I follow, some of the people that I talk to, that there has been a little bit of a liftoff of morale and ability for Ukrainians to fight and desire to fight. And it seems to me that with what Syrskyi and Madyar and everyone else in Ukraine is doing, this is potentially a change for something major and much better than we have right now. But this all comes from the hard work of the Ukrainian military and the unmanned system forces. The latest strike was in Bashkortostan, pretty far away from the Ukrainian front line, where there is a major facility of SLAVA. And this has been pretty juicy target. It's one of the bigger ones in Russia, and there has been reported multiple strikes against the facility, major fires, so something useful definitely was hit. In Belgorod region, massive strikes against the targets as well. Additional strikes in Astrakhan region, owned by Gazprom plant, also has been struck and now is shut down. Ukrainian balloons used in drone attacks in Russia, that is an interesting part. They were sent to Moscow in their latest attack, where there was this crazy, absolutely insane kind of video of this plane that was forced to fly super low over the buildings in Moscow. There was been also struck with a combined attack on the Russian port of Novorossiysk and Tuapse. And this was an interesting attack because it used both the regular drones to strike targets in the area, but also used the unmanned vessels on the sea to strike targets. And we've heard that the targets were specifically the oil pumping stations that pump the oil into the tankers that come to fill up. So Ukraine is very systematically targeting Russian oil and gas infrastructure. It is clear that Ukraine is fully committed to absolutely bring Russia to its knees, and it has been working super effectively so far. More to come, and it's only going to get worse for Russia. Firepoint, the producer of Flamingo missiles, has now localized the production of jet engines for cruise missiles. So the story behind the jet engines for Flamingos is as follows. There were older jet engines that were used for some types of planes, but the planes became obsolete and not really being used by anyone, and there was this stockpile of older jet engines. And Firepoint used engines from that stockpile to develop the Flamingo missile, which was a huge success, as we've seen, and it is going to be now stockpiled and used in some kind of a massive combined attack later against the targets inside of Russia. That is 100% we know about it, and everyone is just expecting to when. But now, because the stockpile is going to run out at one point or another, now Firepoint has actually realized that they would need more of those engines, so they actually localized the production of these engines and now are going to be producing the engines all up and running. There is not a single day that goes by without Russian war crimes, and this time they have been using cluster munitions on the civilians inside of a Kherson region. Now, I don't know how to talk about it without trying to explain that you cannot use cluster munitions in civil areas. That's a war crime for many reasons. But more importantly, everyone was surprised by the visual view of these cluster munition parts. because this is not something that is found in the Russian missiles. Well, now we found out that it turns out that these come from the North Korean missiles. So Russia is buying North Korean missiles with North Korean cluster munitions to commit their war crimes. This is modern Russia, by the way, that we still in Europe trying to pretend that there is some kind of a international law that we must abide because we cannot confiscate Russian assets. Yes, just sending in cluster munition from North Korea over civilian areas. That Russia. Ukrainian intelligence was able to hack into the government services in Crimea, and some really valuable data has been extracted. It is reported over 100 terabytes of intelligence data has been now extracted from the government of Crimea. And this will help a lot. There is already uncovered information about the transfer of Ukrainian children, so it will help Ukraine to track the children down. Then there is also information against the military personnel of Russia, including some of their agent data. And additionally, there are lists for people that got rewards, those who got killed, and other participants in the invasion of Ukraine. So again, to help track them later down, to remember those people who committed war crimes against Ukraine. So to make sure that every single one of these fools will pay for what they did, one way or another. And talking about war crimes, an absolutely horrific video with intercepted intelligence data has been published by the 3rd Army Corps. And I mean, you can say that potentially audio on that video has been AI created, whatever. But thankfully, the video is pretty accurately describes exactly what is happening there. And it is insanely horrific. So there comes a systematic order essentially from the higher up over the intelligence and the radio chain here in that video. And I don't advise you watching that video, but like if you want to, you can in our Discord server. And in that video, the Russian soldiers are ordered to go into the civilian houses and execute everyone. And they execute everyone except for the small girl. And the small girl, they just take captive and they try to hide the bodies from her so she doesn't see what happens with her parents. And now she's been abducted by the Russians. Over the last 4 months, there have been a controversial reporting on the situation with Russian soldiers. Some sources say that Russia is having a very good conscription rate, so they are creating even additional groups. They are even creating more strategic reserves. And then there is other people that are stating is like, no, Russia is not doing this. They are trying to do it on paper, but it is something that they just gonna do to rotate out. They don't have actually enough people to get new people into Ukraine, and that's why they're struggling. They're actually having a little bit of a manpower shortage for their ambition. And this is actually also often reported by the Russian Z propagandists themselves. And now Russia is also introducing a bill that it basically allows Russia to conscript over the whole year. So if beforehand Russia had 2 periods during the year that it can call into military the people that reached 19 years of age, now it is been moved to be that they can be called in at any moment in time. So as soon as Russia will see that they need some more manpower on the front line, they will start conscripting more young people. Now, for people that think is like, oh, but Russia is conscripting people into their army to serve in Russia and not send them to war in Ukraine. Firstly, yes, but that's all very much on paper. In reality, that is not what's happening, because in reality, these people, once they get conscripted, there are people that Russia is hiring to pressure them physically, psychologically, and just ideologically motivate them to join the Russian military and sign contract. Conscription has become a full-on pathway to the contract service, aka invasion into Ukraine. That is what Russian conscription is, and everyone else that's telling you otherwise, they don't know what they're talking about whatsoever. Pretty bad news coming from China to Russia, as China cancels official subsidies for copper and nickel imports from Russia. In September, the Chinese government canceled unofficial subsidies that help state-owned companies import copper and nickel from Russia. Previously, these benefits in form of discounts or fixed payments compensated logistical costs and provided competitive advantage to Russian suppliers. Now, this is gone. The changes reportedly came amid a decline in Chinese imports of most Russian commodities in January-June 2025 by oil by 11% year-on-year, petroleum products by 28%, LNG by 13%, and wood and coal by 10%. China is importing from Russia less and less and exporting to Russia more and more. Russia is purely becoming Chinese bitch, and that's why China does not want for the war to stop, so to say, because they are very happy where this is going. This is benefiting China. The continuation of this war, Russia not losing, is benefiting China the most. And to finish on a positive note, we have further movement towards the reparation loans to Ukraine that could be up to 130 billion euros. We have talked about that the shifting German position on the stance what to do with the frozen Russian assets in Europe has now opened the talks that instead of taking those assets and confiscating them, we can just issue a full loan for that amount, and then Russia would repay that loan as part of the reparations for Ukraine, which is a no-brainer whatsoever. So it's essentially is confiscation with extra step, which proves my point once again that I've been telling for 3 years. If there is a will, there will be a way. So we in Europe need to acknowledge that our politicians were just waffling around and trying to gaslight us that it's illegal and impossible to touch these Russian assets. Like, you know me, I just have so much allergy to bullshit, and that is why I am sometimes harsh and edgy and maybe not the best person to listen to. But I am very grateful that you listened to this point, and I want to say thanks for supporting Ukraine, thanks for being subscribed to this channel, and Slava Ukraini, I love you. And I will see you next time.